new spirit is at work in American poetry. I won't say it's a wave, I won't say it's a trend. That's convenient and military, and I'll leave the bore of tags to the men on time. Whatever it is, has been happening like breathing, quietly and spontaneously, among individual poets for some while now. And a good sampling of it is in Donald Hall's Penguin anthology of contemporary American poetry. Flip through Lowell's early poems, as fine and wild and rich and stiff as the animal room at the Vatican, to the intimate disarmament of this. Only teaching on Tuesdays, bookworming in pajamas fresh from the washer each morning. I hog a whole house on Boston's hardly passionate Marlborough Street, where even the man scavenging filth in the back alley trash cans has 2 children, a beach wagon, a helpmate, and is a young Republican. The shift in tone is already history. The flashing, elaborate carapace of Lord Weary's castle dropped for life studies, walking the tightrope of the psyche naked. Snodgrass does something similar, albeit in watercolors, in Heart's Needle. There's no exhibitionism about it, no thunder and lightning. The voice is quiet, colloquial, laconic, wry. As often as not, it's the voice of the solipsist. I myself am hell. Nobody's here. The inwardness of these images, their plummeting subjectivity, is what Mr. Hall points to as genuinely new to the American scene. The uncanny faculty of melting through the leaves of the wallpaper, through the dark looking-glass, into a world one can only call surrealistic and irrational. The analyst's couch has played its role here, I think, that important and purgatorial bit of American literary furniture. Certainly the claustrophobic flow of nightmare and the startlements of free association inform passages like this from Louis Simpson's poem, There Is. I have the poor man's nerve tic, irony. I see through the illusions of the age. The bell tolls and the hearse advances, and the mourners follow for my entertainment. I tread the burning pavement, the streets where drunkards stretch like photographs of civil death, and trumpets strangle in electric shelves. The mannequins stare at me scornfully. I know they are pretending all day to be in earnest. And can it be that love is an illusion? When darkness falls on the enormous street, the air is filled with Eros whispering. Eyes, mouths contrive to meet in silence, fearing they may be prevented. Now this is a far cry from the early, pastoral and courtly Simpson, the shepherds shouting ut hoy for intellectual joy, the caravels sailing to Cathay. Eyes and mouths amputated of humanity fabricate their contacts like neurotic cuttlefish in a cloud of ink. The word eros falls with the hiss of some disease. Most of Simpson's recent poems possess this curious tension and inevitability. Their electric charge does not seem to depend on any special word or image. It's roused rather as emotion is roused in much modern cinema, by the juxtaposition of images without editorializing. The images jostle and touch. The spark that springs, horror, tenderness, whatever, is the response of the viewer. I say viewer because so much of this poetry is visual. Take these lines from Sunday in Glastonbury by Robert Bly. It is out in the flimsy suburbs where the light seems to shine through the walls. My black shoes stand on the floor like 2 open graves. The curtains do not know what to hope for, but they are obedient. How strange to think of India. Wealth is nothing but lack of people. The act, not committed here, of stepping into those shoes broods over the poem like a little doom. The very weight and hang of the curtains is personal, personified, And this in-feeling, this identification with light, trees, water, things, this is another aspect of the new poetry. Everything is listening, trembling, sentient. There's no sure objective ground. Stillness and motion, near and far, telescope upsettingly. They become one. As James Merrill asks in his poem, After Greece, but where is home? These walls, these limbs, the very spaniel underfoot races in sleep toward what? It is autumn. I did not invite those guests, windy and brittle, who drink my liquor. Returning from a walk, I find the bottles filled with spleen, my room itself smeared by reflection onto the far hemlocks. I some days flee and dream, back to the exposed porch of the maidens, only to find my great-great-grandmothers erect there, peering into a globe of red bohemian glass. James Wright's new poems seem so pure and clear they might be documentaries, yet there's a darkness in this poem of his on miners, and the images drift into something at once subconscious and archetypal. The police are dragging for the bodies of miners in the black waters of the suburbs. Below, some few crawl, searching until they clasp the fingers of the sea. Somewhere, beyond ripples and drowsing woodchucks, a strong man, alone, beats on the door of a grave, crying, "Oh, let me in." Many women mount long stairs into the shafts and emerge in the tottering palaces of abandoned cisterns. In the middle of the night, I can hear cars moving on steel rails, colliding underground. Is it a coincidence that so many American poets should all at once cast off the old stiff suits of early styles, Lowell, Simpson, Adrian Rich, Anthony Hecht, and W.S. Merwin, for example? What I don't think is a coincidence is that so many of these poets should themselves be translators, very considerable and original translators of foreign poets such as Pasternak, Montale, Neruda, Trocla, and so on. It would be naive to claim that this new surrealism had jumped, full-blown, if slightly manic, from the collective American poetic brain. I do think the voice in the poems I've been reading is uniquely American. That's where it lives. But it's not all that miraculously without its influences. Galway Kinnell has a line describing dawn in New Hampshire, and the dimension of depth seizes everything. That is, I think, what's been happening in a lot of American poetry. Let me close with a passage from Kinnell's flower-herding pictures on Mount Monadnock. In the forest I discover a flower. The invisible life of the thing goes up in flames that are invisible, like cellophane burning in the sunlight. It burns up. Its drift is to be nothing. In its covetousness it has a way of uttering itself in a place of itself. Its blossoms claim to float in the empyrean, a wrathful presence on the blur of the ground. The appeal to heaven breaks off. The petals begin to fall in self-forgiveness. It is a flower. On this mountainside, it is dying.